Welcome to Season 3 of Window Dressing, Sirens and Gossip Rag Goddesses of the New Millennium. This season is about my generation and the specific brand of chauvinism that permeated culture in the early to mid-2000s. I start the season off with Aubrey O'Day of the MTV reality show Making the Band and the supergroup that came out of the show, Danity Kane. Day was on a plethora of other reality shows, including UK's Big Brother and Donald Trump's Celebrity Apprentice. She also became a founding member of the pop duo Dumb Blonde and had a solo music career. Making the Band was Diddy's show, aka Puff Daddy, aka Love, aka Sean Combs. The premise was, as stated, to make a band from the bottom up. Diddy had all the best people to help shape talented young artists into a supergroup. The show's first season brought us O-Town, the successful boy band, and the second birthed Da Band, which I don't recall at all. Danity Kane's season started filming in 2004 and began airing on MTV in 2005. Their stay on the show extended past Making the Band 3 to Making the Band 4, which featured 3 musical acts, Danity Kane, Day 26, and solo artist Donnie. In total, Danity Kane was on the show from 2005 to 2009. Aubrey was openly critical of Diddy on and off the show. Her voice was one of the few until recently. Another early outcry came from Cassie Ventura, whose recent lawsuit in November of 2023 led to the federal suit and subsequent grand jury indictment of Diddy. He was formally charged on September 17th of this year, 2024. Cassie spoke out against him long before she filed suit. She was Diddy's longtime girlfriend, who was signed to Bad Boy when she was 19, so she was his girlfriend and his employee. She had a successful self-titled album before being signed to Bad Boy. She started dating Diddy shortly after being signed. He was 37 at the time. In her civil suit, she alleges rape, beatings, mental and verbal abuse. It is really important to note that people didn't believe Cassie or anyone else who accused Diddy of abuse. Cassie was dismissed as a gold digger, and both women suffered severe setbacks to their careers as a result of their unwillingness to stay silent. Cassie wasn't believed until CNN obtained and then aired a security cam video of her being brutalized by Diddy in a hotel hallway. It's a shame that we have to see a woman be kicked repeatedly while she's already on the ground to listen to what she is saying. Cassie's suit was settled within 24 hours of being filed. She asked for $30 million, but the actual settlement reached is not public. Aubrey has yet to share details of her experience with Diddy or file a suit of her own, but I would speculate that may change. Her Danity Kane group mate, Don Richard, filed a suit on September 10, 2024, accusing Diddy of sustained sexual abuse, among many other things. Diddy fired Aubrey on air, disbanded the group, and spread vicious stories about her quote-unquote promiscuity. The slurs he threw at her shaped her experience as a young woman in the public eye. The blatant slut-shaming is almost as bad as the by-the-book narcissistic manipulations that are plain to see on the show. We are just starting to discover what went on behind the scenes in Diddy's life and in his relationships with artists, girlfriends, and other alleged victims. I have not been able to stop reading the U.S. versus Diddy docs and the individual civil suits. There are currently over 20 individual lawsuits filed, but there are over 120 alleged victims set to file a series of lawsuits in the coming months. The attorney representing these clients, Tony Busby, spoke publicly last month at a press conference about these upcoming accusations and the alleged victims, including minors as young as 10 and 13. Diddy targeted both men and women, girls and boys. There is language in Don Richards' suit that suggests his abusive treatment targeted women specifically, but his alleged sexual crimes seem to have been equal in terms of gender. I would expect the number of alleged victims to be much higher than we have heard thus far. Because of Diddy's popularity and the ubiquity of his parties, there are expected to be other celebrities named in some of these suits. All of this hits close to home for me. When I was a teenager, I dated a man who was in the music industry. When he failed as a rapper, he fell back on being a pimp. I was introduced to R. Kelly at a party through him, thankfully with very little interest in me on his part. Twista, the Chicago-based rapper, and Snoop Dogg are also among the men I ran into during this time. I met the latter at the Literal Pimps and Players Ball, also in Chicago. That was one of the worst experiences of my life. I was lucky in many ways and escaped the relationship with just one severe beating. But the things I experienced, including physical and psychological abuse, instilled a fear in me that is just as integral to my structure as my bones. He is now in a federal prison on charges of sex trafficking minors. His name is Daquan Sawyer. Something Aubrey said in the middle of recording Danity Kane's second album connected all the pieces for me. She said, "It's a pimp and hoe situation. I feel like a hoe who's just been pimped, and that's it." Aubrey is my age. She was born in 1984. And as you know from my last episode about the film Maxine, set in 1985, I was born in 1985. Aubrey went to the Making the Band audition through the urging of her mother, who had seen the advertisement for the Diddy/MTV show Open Call. Aubrey was in college at the time and was driven by her then boyfriend to LA to try out. She was chosen out of thousands of women and was the first of the 5 members to officially make the group. The other group members included Andrea Fimbrace, Don Richard, Dee Woods, and Shannon Becks. That final arrangement of members takes a lot of time to come together. The show itself was one of MTV's most successful of all time. The network that transitioned from its moniker Music Television into reality in the 1990s with Real World and Road Rules had found a happy medium in the 2000s with the shows that combined reality and music, like Making the Band and Making the Video, both of which featured Danity Kane. It was not the MTV of my childhood, but it was the MTV we got. Diddy was a huge fucking star at the time and had an unreal amount of power in the industry. I wouldn't think it necessary to do much explaining about him, or MTV for that matter. But after listening to the Call Her Daddy podcast interview with Aubrey, it has been brought to my attention that young people might not know about the former or the latter. The host, Alex Cooper, actually asks Aubrey to explain who Diddy is. So in short, he was a hip-hop mogul and probably still would be, if not for a series of events that was a long time coming. If you want to understand Bad Boy as a label, I would refer you to Tupac's 1996 classic battle track, Hit 'Em Up. For more information on Diddy and his history of abuse, I recommend listening to the Diddy episode of the podcast Beyond the Blinds. Making the Band is not currently streaming anywhere, so I rewatched the show in out-of-order short segments on YouTube. The quality was poor, and I don't identify episode numbers as I typically would. I reference the timeline by the progress of Danity Kane and any other information I can glean. The first round of group member selection is in New York. The girls all live in one house, more specifically the floor of an apartment building, with cameras everywhere, Big Brother style. There are nearly 20 girls, all fighting for a slot in the band. This portion of the show is basically an aimless project runway full of impossible tasks on no sleep. Diddy hires a den mother of sorts who comes off as a sadistic-leaning drug addict. His name is Jason, no last name. We actually see the interview process, where he sweats profusely, doesn't seem to have any real qualifications, or pass any kind of check that would qualify him to be the sole adult in a house full of sometimes teenage girls. Although I do think a fair amount of them are over 21. Aubrey is not. She is still in her late teens. Jason is cruel to the girls, takes food out of the house, and in one scene appears to have peed his pants and not noticed. The girls are clearly being starved at this point. The requirement for all of them to be stick thin is a familiar one for anyone who grew up in the early 2000s. They all look weak and unbelievably frail. They go from the choreographer to the voice coach and back again. They are woken up at all hours and essentially broken like horses, workhorses. Don Richards' 2024 lawsuit filed against Diddy, Bad Boy, and its subsidiaries bears out these claims, as does the actual footage of the show. The female choreographer, Lori Ann Gibson, acted as a beacon for the girls and had her own documented issues with Diddy while she was working for him on Making the Band. She went to the police in 2007, alleging that Diddy physically threatened her. She later went back to work for him and the show. The conversation about Lori Ann coming back to work was caught on film and aired. In it, Lori Ann attempts to hold her ground, but that ground is quickly eroded by Diddy's gaslighting. Aubrey stands up for the group and herself by confronting Jason, and eventually he is removed as a result of her actions. In a scene that showcases Aubrey's tenacity and Jason's cruelty, she goes to him to try to find common ground and extend an olive branch. He treats her like trash and says that he doesn't even remember what she does. He asks her to perform for him. She does, and while she's belting a cappella in the living room, he mimes blowing on his nails and says in a blasé tone, "Now I remember." Later, he calls a house meeting, in which he attempts to scapegoat Aubrey for the problems in the house, aka the problems he is starting. All the girls validate their issues with him, making it plain that this isn't Aubrey's fault. One of the girls, out of what feels like frustration, says they, meaning all the girls, will just try to take his criticisms without complaint. This is where Aubrey speaks up. She says, "I have been around people that have criticized the shit out of me. I have gone through so much shit. I don't want anyone to assume that I can't take criticism. The only thing I want to say is you didn't give me criticism. You blew on your nails and you looked at me and you said, She says all of this with a fire that comes from a deep-seated sense of justice. She isn't just standing up for herself. She is standing up for the truth and for what she believes is right. Her blonde highlights against dark hair pop, and her lore begins to take shape. In her confessional interview for this scene, Aubrey is wearing a baby pink corset-style top with a knotted pearl necklace that reads like Britney does Madonna at the VMAs. She hasn't come into her own yet style-wise, but the path is being laid. Her blonde bombshell looks are encouraged and dismissed by Diddy at various points in the show. Aubrey, from the start, is outspoken and brave. When I use the word outspoken, I think it brings with it negative connotations, or at the very least, suggests a bravado that denotes ego. That is not what I mean. What I mean is that the expectation of women is to be meek. I'm not saying the other girls were meek. I am saying that is literally what is expected of you as a girl or woman. When somebody acts outside of that accepted role, they are outspoken. Aubrey pushed against what was expected of her and therefore women societally. The funny thing about that particular expectation is that it not only goes unsaid, but it is part of the deal to act that the opposite is true. We as women are supposed to pretend like we agree with whatever the man is doing or saying, and not ever let on that we don't. And by the way, It's not an act we engage in for our benefit. It's an act we put on for our survival. Women don't allow themselves to get less, be treated as less, and so on. They assess and survive the situation. We are treated like shit and have to actively act like we are treated well. Aubrey did not do that. She broke the sexist societal contract. By the end of the first season of Making the Band 3, Diddy decides that the remaining girls are not good enough to make a group. He sends them home for 4 months and then judges them on their return. The amount of effort they put into their active weight loss, which seems to have been a requirement for every member, even the very thin ones, ranks high in his assessment. He keeps Aubrey and Andrea. They are the only two chosen at this stage that actually make it into the group, and one other girl, Malika. Diddy insists on doing another round of talent searching, which hits almost every major city in the U.S. 10,000 additional girls audition. During this final round of selection for the first round of girls, Aubrey is lauded for her appearance and her ability to lead, which both become issues for Diddy later. I was a cocktail waitress after I left Daquan, and I remember our bartender, a pretty woman in her late 20s who had been gang raped at a party, still came to work the next weekend. I had a coworker who was 19 and was sleeping with the 40-something-year-old manager of the bar. Our uniform was a purple corset and a miniskirt, and I would frequently get in trouble for not flirting with the patrons. Keep in mind, this is what I did just a year or so after escaping from an abusive pimp boyfriend. This was the environment at the time. The things said and done on Making the Band were a reflection of society. So while it's disgusting, it is by no means shocking to see Diddy fat shame or degrade these young women on national television. The normalization of his behavior was drilled home with a phrase that was thrown around a lot on the show: the reality of the business. It felt like a catch-all explanation for the abuse. In the first part of Danity Kane's journey, he said, and I quote, "You gotta bring something to the party. That's what I want. That's what Daddy is looking for." That gives you an idea of the unchecked and unwavering power and abuse of said power that propped up Diddy's ego at the time. I think what is more upsetting than the fat shaming is the concerted effort to slut shame Aubrey. The seeds of this are planted early, embedded in Diddy's compliments, and then later used to punish and control her. Initially, Diddy praises her, saying she is the girl next door type. The Playboy reference will get turned against her later, just wait. He compliments her dancing, asking if she has any, quote, black in her. He points to her as an example of how to dance. Aubrey spoke on Bunny XO's podcast Dumb Blonde recently about how much respect that one comment afforded her. His words had so much power to build up or tear down. Anyone who has ever been in a verbally abusive relationship knows exactly what this feels like and what kind of havoc it can wreak on your self-worth. When Aubrey starts to grow into herself and the group starts to embody its own identity, Diddy feels the need to tear down Danity Kane and Aubrey specifically. She was a leader from the start. The coaches all noticed her ability to lead effectively, but over time, Diddy alienated her from the group so he could shift the blame for issues away from himself and onto her. After the second round of open cattle call-style talent scouting, a group of 38 girls are chosen and brought to the Apollo Theater to perform in front of Diddy and the rest of the team, including Doc, the vocal coach, and Lorianne, the choreographer. The selection process has a real predator-prey vibe and feels like the small-town bus searches Playboy did in the early 2000s. It's equal parts ick and iconic. The original three girls, Malika, Andrea, and Aubrey, all meet up with the new girls at the old house. The Green Street flat that was ornately decorated in early aughts trash meets Baroque style, which in hindsight is a great look. There were wall sconces, hot pink flocked wallpaper, and vanity tables galore. Now the house looks like a prison. In Aubrey's words, it's jail. It's painted stark white, and the beds have been replaced with cot-style bunks. The new girls don't seem to mind, but the original three look a bit like they have survived the slaughter only to be led back into a cage. The girls get a reprieve from their stark surroundings when they are flown to Miami, where they meet the Backstreet Boys. Seeing them shake hands with Nick Carter is a very sad and strange reminder of his alleged victims and his brother's untimely death. Nick Carter has since been accused of sexual assault and rape many times over, and his brother supported those allegations publicly until very shortly before his death. One of Nick's alleged victims was Dream Group member Melissa Schumer. Dream was a girl group on Diddy's label Bad Boy, whose success was cut short. Dream was probably Diddy's inspiration for Danity Kane, and perhaps the whole experience of making the band. Aaron Carter, Nick's brother, died of an overdose at age 34 in 2022. Back in New York, Aubrey's role as leader takes a back seat to one of the new girls, Dinosh. Dinosh takes charge in the first group challenge, and she leads with an iron fist. She is cruel and nitpicky with the girls, and Aubrey's light is slightly dimmed as a result. Diddy is set to make the final selection and actually make the band live in Times Square. The chosen group will open for the Backstreet Boys on tour, tying in the Miami meetup. Much to Dinosh's chagrin, Aubrey gets a call from the MTV press office. She is offered a magazine spot in Blender's September Top 100 issue. I will post these images on Window Dressing's Instagram page. She was the only girl asked to be in the magazine. She kills it at the photo shoot. She says it made her feel like she was already a star. Here's the thing. Some people are born with that shine, whether it is reflected back at them or not. Aubrey has it. The shoot itself was a little girl sex queen theme that is reminiscent of every Rolling Stone spread featuring Britney, Christina, or Aaliyah. In one shot, Aubrey wears a crop top kitty cat t-shirt with panties. A bow is strategically placed on her shoulder, and she has exposed abs for days. Her hair is wild and curly, on the darker side, but with bright blonde money pieces in the front. A trend that has returned along with the joy of the so-called trash culture of this time period. Let's give Aubrey and women like her the credit they deserve this time around. Ironically, Dinosh blows the final performance by coming in off-key. The super sexy outfits Aubrey's group wears don't cover the loss. The other group, with Andrea in it, wins. During the final selection in Times Square, Aubrey is chosen first and Andrea last, but they both make the band. The other official members are Dee Woods, formerly known as Juanita, Dawn, and Shannon. When Diddy announces Aubrey's name, he screams, "Come to Daddy." She hugs him. Now that the group has been chosen, each girl makes bachelor-esque hometown visits. Dawn's hometown is a post-Hurricane Katrina New Orleans. The storm hit in between the final selection in Times Square and the return to shoot the next season. This roots the show in a moment in time for me, more than the low-rise jeans and money piece highlights. I remember where I was when the storm hit, and how much it changed New Orleans. I was auctioned off at a club in San Francisco, or rather, a date with me and many other women were auctioned off to benefit the relief effort. I wish I remembered how much money I fetched, but it does strike me as an unbelievably on-brand way of fundraising for this time period. My date, or rather my buyer, was an asshole, but his best friend, whom I dated soon after, is still a friend today. Hi, Mark. Danity Kane donated $5,000 to Dawn's former high school, which may not be a lot of money for Diddy, but it was a lot for the group. The specifics of what the girls were paid for their time on the show and in the band is hazy, but it's clear it wasn't very much. Aubrey did an interview where she said she remembers her salary being $4,000 for the show, for a full season. I don't know if it changed or how tied up with the band the money was. Aubrey says about Hurricane Katrina, "It makes you question tons of things. Where's the help? Where's the aid? And why isn't something being done to make the situation better?" This was second-generation Bush era for my younger listeners. The aftermath of the storm was mishandled by the administration, to say the least. This is the time period when Kanye West said, "George Bush doesn't care about Black people," on live television. In many ways, the city and its residents never recovered. People, in a lot of cases, were permanently relocated, and the regional identity, along with people's lives and loved ones, were lost. Post-hometown visits, Aubrey dyes her hair brown, and when Diddy sees it, he says, and I quote, "It looks like you have a bootleg wig on." This comes shortly after he fat-shamed D. Woods to the point where she says that it made her feel like a younger version of herself, one that was full of self-hatred. Diddy also takes issue with the girls dating. He focuses on Aubrey and Andrea on that front. He specifically asks Aubrey first, in a dismissive tone, "Do you think that's going to last?" of her new relationship. When Aubrey says yes, he moves on to Andrea, who is dating a music producer. Diddy says, "He's a rat." The meaning of that statement isn't totally clear to me, except that Diddy is paranoid and doesn't want these girls to be snatched from under his thumb. It also suggests that he is saying any interest this music producer has in Andrea is actually about getting information about Diddy or the group. That, as a young girl, is wildly hurtful to hear, and probably not true, although I am pretty sure that the guy Andrea was dating at this time turned out to be an asshole. He continues to break the girls with a grueling schedule to test their ability to do what it takes. The sleep allotted on this schedule is 2 to 3 hours a night. Neglecting your basic needs doesn't equal star power. It's also counterproductive to the end game, which I assume is a sustained career. I realize as I write this that that is not the end game. Money is. And in Diddy's case, there is something far more nefarious in the mix of his motivations. But even now, in a supposedly better environment for artists, an up-and-coming star like Chappell Roan has been shamed for pushing back on a schedule that even a veteran like Stevie Nicks has seen and recognized as grueling. I would like to think that her refusal to be silenced around the workhorse culture that dominates the music industry would be rewarded. But I worry it will automatically disqualify her or label her as difficult, as happens to so many women in one way or another. The point is that these girls can't say no. It's the whole premise of the show that they prove their right to be there. They begin recording their first album. Aubrey is starting to feel insecure about her singing talents. She feels, in her own words, like the pretty white girl who can't sing. My guess is a lot has been done to make her feel this way. What I have witnessed on the show is a concerted effort on Diddy's part to flesh out the girls' insecurities and then exploit them. Aubrey has said publicly that Diddy groomed her, and she was right. His behavior is so similar to domestic abuse and the control tactics of pimps and narcissists. I don't know if he is a narcissist, and I know the term is thrown around so much these days that it is beginning to lose meaning. But I promise it does have meaning, and they do exist. Sometimes narcissism can look like a man who wears a bikini kill shirt but screams at you while you're crying behind closed doors. Other times it can be a rap mogul whose image is of a jovial kingmaker. It's a useful description, but in Diddy's case, it's not a diagnosis, just an observation. When the group starts to record their first song, Diddy says about Aubrey, "She's trying to sing. She can't be trying to sing." He later completely pulls her off the track. She is devastated. She is already feeling insecure about her voice, and he latches in on that, and she is soon crying in the parking lot. In a confessional interview, she says, "I know there is a lesson to learn here, but I don't know what it is." The seed of confusion and self-doubt is being sown purposely to gain control. It shows her that she is replaceable. Of course, she's not, but we aren't there yet. Aubrey says to Dawn, "I have no right to be mad." Dawn says, "You have every right." The power dynamic of the situation, the girls versus Diddy, all hinges on their gratitude to him. That becomes crystal clear when the most outspoken member of the group is saying out loud that she has no right to be angry. Aubrey's hair is starting to show signs of what will later become her signature look. She is wearing it half back and slightly poofed at the crown in a Bardot des Deneuve look that suits her, and ironically, the situation. Bardot, Deneuve, and 1960s Jane Fonda were all shaped, molded, and in many ways groomed by French director Roger Vadim. The parallels are nauseating. I'm going to end this week's discussion here. But next time, I will return with part 2 of my Aubrey O'Day episode. There are 3 parts in total. Thank you for listening to Window Dressing, Sirens and Gossip Rag Goddesses of the New Millennium. Please like and subscribe wherever you are listening, and follow the podcast's Instagram page for more content at Window Dressing Podcast. I'm Madeline Jane Auble.